Welcome to Talking Jazz. It's March. March is Women's History Month. This is the month when we always think about, pay tribute to our great women and acknowledge they have achieved in their contributions. Of course, we should have all year Women's History Month. We're all in this together, but it seems that we still need to pick out a special time to pay tribute. March 8 is actually International Women's Day all over the world. This year, we get to celebrate in Vienna, where I currently teach at the Jam Music Lab, with a Jazz Girls Day on March 8. That will also be live streamed, or the concert in the evening will be live streamed. It'll be 10 a.m. US time. jammusiclab.com is the site to find us. And I wanted to talk a little bit about why we need to celebrate and the concept of all female ensembles that's often questioned, seemed as a separation or a gimmick or just, something that seems to be invented but not needed. I've been doing a lot of research, a lot of looking into the issues. Of course, as a jazz pianist myself, I've found myself over the last 30-something years of my career often as the only woman in the band, and always wondered why and what that does to you and your music if you're always the outsider or the extraordinary or the special one. And so one thing about these all-women environment is that this tokenism and the stereotyping that's often going on as the extraordinary, the special one, the outstanding, the different, goes away. My guess, and something I'm hoping to shed also more light on, is that by not being a token, the music making becomes more natural, and actually the voice that's contributing the music, and I mean the instrumental, vocal voice, whichever voice, the musical voice becomes the natural voice, and it's not a voice that's adapted to an environment that's not theirs. And so what I'll do is I'll share today some of the incredible all-women bands that we had, especially during the times of the Second World War, where there was a need for extra musicians. And then I also want to share a little bit about the Jazz Girls Days that we're doing, and point out that, since you're probably hearing this show on one of the Indiana stations, that on April 15, we have a Jazz Girls Day at Noblesville High School, and I'm currently raising some funds for this event. There's a Facebook fundraiser, or Arts with a Purpose, Kathy Morris nonprofit organization, artswithapurpose.com is also supporting our fundraiser. And we do need material, cover the material costs, the food costs, some of the mentors, because it's very, very, very important to keep this free for the girls who should participate. I'll tell you more about it, but let me start with some music. And let's go way back in time to 1927. There was a group called the Ingenious, and they toured the States and all over the world. And it was an all-female group that was actually, at the time, started by William Morris, often associated with the famous booking agency, and sometimes called the Girl Paul Whitemans of Syncopation. And this was a little different. This was kind of a novelty band, and it's not the big band that you envision now with 15 horns and the rhythm section, but they had all kinds of novelty and classical instruments. There were accordions and harmonicas and banjos and violins and cellos and you name it. And this is a medley they are performing. This is also something that can be found on YouTube. Apparently, it's a medley of songs entitled Keep Sweeping Cobwebs Off the Moon, or Changes, and then You Don't Like It Not Much, Rain, Mighty Like a Rose, Chasing the Blues Away, and then also the Tiger Rag. And it was super fun looking at the video and seeing that there were a lot of comments saying, "Oh, this is my great aunt. Oh, this is my mom." And one comment was, "The cellist, Adelheid Leafield, was my grandmother. She studied music at the University of Chicago, but women were not hired in orchestras at the time, with the exception of harpists. So after playing with the Ingenious, she married and moved to Winnipeg, where she played cello in the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra." So let's hear the Ingenious doing a medley with lots of novelty instruments, lots of fun and swing. This is 1927. That was a group called the Ingenious in 1927, performing a medley of all kinds of Ziegfeld Folly tunes with all kinds of jazz, swing, and novelty and symphonic instruments. And as I mentioned earlier, it's March, we're celebrating Women's History Month, and I'm putting a program together with all women bands. So every note that you're hearing today on the program is going to be played by a female performer. And why? What's the purpose? Why should we separate? Why should we point this out? As I mentioned earlier, there is reasons. There's with tokenism and stereotyping, which often causes that the person that comes in as a minority will adapt to the majority structure. And I just would love to showcase for a moment these groups where these pressures are not apparent. Again, I'm also pointing out that we are putting together a lot of Jazz Girls Days, 2 in Austria in March and 2 in Indiana, in Bloomington and Noblesville High School, April 5th and April 15th. I always make sure there's an all-female mentorship going on, and I hire the best players I can find far and wide. This year at Noblesville High School, I'll even have Jamie Baum, one of the greatest jazz musicians of our times from New York, with me. So our next example is the incredible International Sweethearts of Rhythm. That was a big band, very popular during the 40s. Actually, the original members of the band met in Mississippi in 1938 at the Piney Woods Country Life School, which was a school for poor African and African American children, for orphans. The majority actually were orphans. The principal and founder, Lawrence Jones, this idea of creating this female music group. In 1949, this group became a professional act and actually started touring and realized, well, this is more fun than being in the orphanage. And so they jumped ship. They did not return from their tour, eventually settled in Virginia, in Arlington, Virginia, where they had wealthy Virginians supporting them. And this was also one of the first integrated groups, very international flavor. There were members, Latina members, Asian, Caucasian, Black, Indian, Puerto Rican. So they called themselves the International Sweethearts of Rhythm. Initially also 14 to 19-year-old girls. So what great role models for the purpose here that we're talking about, the Jazz Girls Day. They toured quite a bit. Anna Mae Winburn became the band leader in 1941, previously led the Cotton Club Boys in North Omaha, Nebraska, which, among others, had featured Charlie Christian and Fletcher Henderson. So Winburn led the band until her retirement. So we're going to hear Lady Be Good, which is performed by the International Sweethearts of Rhythm. Lady Be Good, performed by the International Sweethearts of Rhythm. And our topic today is Women's History Month. I'm playing music, all female musicians. Every note you're hearing today was performed by a female musician. That's often controversy and often discussed. Why do we need to separate? Why should we point out that somebody is a female musician? And actually, a lot of my colleagues really resist that and say, I do not want to be recognized as a female musician. I want to be recognized as a musician, which absolutely should be the case. But unfortunately, we're not operating that way. So if you look around, the participation of female instrumentalists, unfortunately, is still around the 20% mark, which means it's still treated as a minority and as a token, as a unique thing, as an outlier. One initiative that I lead quite a bit is putting on Jazz Girls Day because it avoids this dropout rate that we experience during teenage years, which causes some of this imbalance. So we have to go to the roots and attack some of these issues. The top is starting to change. Keep pointing out for our Noblesville high school fundraiser for Jazz Girls. They were running a fundraiser, one on Facebook, which you can find if you look for my page, Monika, Monika Herzig, Herzig, or you can go to artswithapurpose.com/jazzgirlsday 2025 and you'll find a way to directly support. All right, let's keep going in history here. We got to the International Sweethearts of Rhythm, who jumped ship after starting to tour out of the orphanage in Mississippi. Another popular group at that time was Frances Carroll and her Coquettes, which featured drummer Viola Smith. Drummer Viola Smith is probably one of the most popular names from that era that is somewhat known. Just recently passed away at the age of 106. Maybe drumming keeps you young. But on the selection that we're going to hear, she will be very prominently featured. And it's an incredible drum solo. And again, you can find these selections also on YouTube so you can see the bands play, which I highly recommend. So let's have a listen to Frances Carroll and her Coquettes featuring drummer Viola Smith.
I'd like you to meet our very charming little drummer, Viola Smith.
Frances Carroll and Her Coquettes, featuring drummer Viola Smith. Our theme today are the great all-female, especially big bands. I'm focusing on the large groups in history, and also Jazz Girls Days initiatives celebrating Women's History Month and International Women's Day on March 8. As I mentioned before, we will present 2 Jazz Girls Days in Indiana on April 5th at Indiana University and April 15th at Noblesville High School. I want to feature one more of these incredible big bands from the Second World War era that were touring army bases and entertaining at a time where there was a musician shortage, obviously. And many of these big bands were very, very good, disappeared right after the wars were over for several reasons. Of course, one of them being that the men came back and reclaimed their positions. And there's a wonderful documentary called Lady Be Good that my friend Katie Ray did. She is originally from Evansville, Indiana, and lives out on the West Coast, where she's a very prominent documentary filmmaker. Highly recommended, Lady Be Good, and it has a lot of the original interviews with the band members. Third group from that era I want to introduce is Ivy Benson. Most of these groups, they were actually led by a vocalist conductor, and so same here. We're going to hear from Ivy Benson's group, I'm Getting Sentimental Over You. Something that is pointed out a lot in their biography is that there was a very high turnover of musicians, because as she once commented, I lost 7 in 1 year to America. Only the other week a girl slipped away from the stage. I thought she was going to the lavatory, but she went off with a GI. Nobody's seen her since. So what happened quite a bit is that when they were touring, the girls would get married to some of the GIs and disappear. And of course, at the time when you get married, touring with a big band all over the world is not possible anymore. Ivy Benson is actually English, from the UK, and the band was mostly based on musicians or comprised of UK musicians. Toured quite a bit, Berlin, Montgomery, performed live for BBC from Hamburg. Right after the King's Speech, they toured Europe and the Middle East and performed at the 1948 Summer Olympics in London. The band disbanded actually in 1982 after a final performance at the Savoy Hotel, briefly reforming in 1983 to celebrate Ivy Benson's 70th birthday. So here is Ivy Benson and her all-female orchestra. I'm Getting Sentimental Over You. Ivy Benson and her all-girl, all-female orchestra performing I'm Getting Sentimental Over You. Ivy Benson being from the UK as well as the orchestra. And our theme being today, Women's History Month, I'm playing music all performed 100% by female performers. We had a lot of the big bands from the Second World War era. Now I introduced several to you. But I also want to introduce you to two current big bands. Current meaning, yes, they are still playing, but they also been around for quite a while. The first one I'm going to introduce is Diva, the band Diva, which is mostly comprised of New York area musicians. Actually was founded in 1990, so they've been around for 35 years by now. Stanley Kay founded them. He heard the Divas co-founder Sherry Miracle, the drummer, play, was impressed and decided to take that on. There was in 1992 there was a nationwide audition search, and the foundation of Diva was poured. We're going to hear a live recording of them at Birdland from 2001 of Caravan, Duke Ellington's Caravan. And I think what's important to note is not only the high musicianship, of course the great playing, but also the really, really great arrangements that band has. And they always made sure they had only the top players and only the best arrangements. One thing that is always a danger if you put these special groups together, to compromise, possibly because you're trying to feature a special gimmick or minority, in this case women, and if you have only a small selection, maybe the quality might not be given. But this is not the case in any of these groups, and of course not in Diva, which I think is one of the important aspects too. So when we do our Jazz Girls Days, I always make sure I get the finest performers that I can find as role models. Role models is such an important thing. If you can't see it, you won't do it because you don't think there's a space for you. We will stage several Jazz Girls Days in April in Indiana, in Bloomington, and at Noblesville High School on April 15th. And I'm hoping, if you hear this, consider supporting especially the Noblesville Jazz Girls Day so we can fund the materials that we need and the dinner, having those really, really great mentors so we can keep it free for the girls to participate, to find in this safe environment, find their voice, find their way of participating without fear, without peer pressure, with their own unique contribution, receive this life skill of participating in a group and not dropping out like we usually see it. So let's get inspired by the amazing, blow your mind group Diva, live at Birdland 2001, performing Duke Ellington's Caravan. That was Diva, the big band founded by Stanley Kay and Sherry Miracle, with the concept of featuring the finest female players that are there. And as we talked about, doing this in honor of Women's History Month, every note that you're hearing during this hour today is performed by a female musician, wishing that we wouldn't have to point female musicians. They are all just really, really, really great musicians. But unfortunately, we still have an imbalance of participation, and some of the needs to work against this imbalance is to provide these opportunities like Jazz Girls Day, where we avoid the dropout rate during the teenage years that causes some of this imbalance. And it is one of the reasons why we still have to point out that there are female musicians, causing a tokenism that we hopefully can avoid soon. What I wanted to show is what great musicianship there is that we're often not aware of. Another finding that is known since years, this myth that maybe you can't blow enough a trumpet or a trombone, or maybe you can't hit hard enough for a drummer. It's a myth. It's not true. And all the things you heard, these incredible drummers like Viola Smith or Sherry Miracle, nothing different in terms of ability. That's not the cause. The cause is the missing role models, often the way jazz is taught during high school that is not inclusive. And we can work against it so we have a truly inclusive music that includes all the voices that we are, not just some. So let's listen to one more of the contemporary big bands. This is the Montclair Women's Big Band. They are based out in Montclair at the West Coast, and they were founded by Ellen Sealing, a trumpet player who actually went to IU early on in the 70s, one of the first students, female students in the IU jazz program. They were founded in 1997 by Ellen and saxophonist Gene Feinberg. They actually have a really unique sound of, yes, big band swing, but also doing blues things and having some great Latin pockets. We're going to hear a tune called Pump It Up. And I want to remind you, I'm also looking for support for our Jazz Girls Days, either at our Facebook fundraiser, which you can find on my page, Monica with a K, Hersig, or on artswithapurpose.com, Jazz Girls Day 2025 for directly. And we would very much appreciate any support to finance so we can offer this for free for the participants. So let's pump it up with the Montclair Women's Big Band. was the Montclair Women's Big Band with a selection called Pump It Up. And we've been celebrating Women's History Month, International Women's Day, March 8th. And I've been playing music with every note and every instrument being played by a female musician throughout this show. There was a time when people were questioning, is that even possible? It is possible, and we always had them in history. They were often hidden figures. Times are changing, but not fast enough. And one of the issues that we often see is this dropout rate during the teenage years. Due to peer pressure and teaching techniques, many do not participate and then slowly disappear, also don't see role models. So one of the very, very important issues and motivations for putting on Jazz Girls Day or showcasing these all-female ensembles, providing those safe environments, is to make sure we do not have this dropout rate, which causes some of the imbalance that we're still witnessing. So thank you for celebrating with me today. Grab a glass of champagne. Let's have a toast to lots of great music and to a music in the future that has all our voices combined to contribute to a larger, more expressive of everybody's whole music. I'm going to close it with actually one of our Shiro selections from the last album, All in Good Time. All the groups we heard today were big bands. This is not quite a big band. It's only 6 of us. This is the cover that I did of Beyonce's Run the World. At the end, when you get there and Will's playing Who Run the World, give it a big shout out, girls. This was very fun to perform during our world tours and make it the closing of every show and hear often large audiences shout together, girls, an affirmation that we need. So again, we're putting on Jazz Girls Days in April 5th at Indiana University, April 15th at Noblesville High School. We do need support for the Noblesville High School Jazz Girls Day to cover our costs for materials, for food, for our mentors, so we can provide this opportunity for free and avoid this dropout rate that causes our still imbalance. Go to either the Facebook fundraiser, look for Monica Hersig, Monica with a K, on my page, and you'll find the fundraiser, or go to artswithapurpose.com, Kathy Morris's nonprofit organization, artswithapurpose.com, Jazz Girls Day 2025. Thank you for supporting. Feel free to come by. There's always a public concert at the end. The girls work in combos. They work up repertoire, and then they share what they did together. And it's a great affirmation for them, builds the self-confidence when they go on stage and they can share, they improvise, they play together, and they go home and continue. Who run the world? Girls. This is Monica Hersig Shiros from the All in Good Time album. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting. Here we go.
Thank you for listening to Talking Jazz. My topic today was celebrating Women's History Month and our upcoming Jazz Girls Day celebrations.
You can hear Talking Jazz every Thursday at 11 a.m. and Mondays at 7 p.m. on WETF 105.7 in South Bend, Indiana, or online at jazzradiowetf.org, and Fridays at 8 p.m. on WICR 88.7 Indianapolis. Previous shows are also on my YouTube channel, Monika Herzig, MonikaHerzig. Please subscribe to the Talking Jazz playlist. Thank you for listening.